Hey everybody. We are doing, I think this is our third or fourth? Third live time, and our first since for quite a while since having Denton. It's been kind of crazy around here in the past few months, and we are really just excited to be able to update some of you on what's going on and a few of the relationships that God has put into our lives recently, and then just kind of telling you kind of what our life looks like right now as we've gone into having 3 kids. And so yeah, I'm getting used to the weather. I know that my mom had told me that she wanted to know just kind of how the kids are doing, what life is like. And one major difference so far for me, of course, is the weather and the snow, and learning that the snow boots that I bought in Georgia at Kohl's do not work very well here. And so I've had to get a whole lot of new things. I got a new coat recently, and just not a huge fan of snow, I've decided.
Yeah, we were running pretty parallel to Georgia for a while, except like 2 weeks ago, I think it was 80 in Georgia, our parents said. And it hit the low around that time here, -15 Celsius, whatever that is.
Yeah, something around like 10 degrees Fahrenheit or something like that. So yeah, it's been definitely an adjustment for me. And it was really funny, the first big snow that we had, I think it was like in January, we probably got around, I don't know, maybe a foot or so, but some of the drifts near our house, because it was snowing for several days, some of the drifts got to be, I don't know, 2 feet high-ish. And again, I've never driven in snow, and especially not ice. And so we live on a hill, and specifically to get into our little courtyard where we park our car, you have to go up this really steep hill. And so very first time, Derek got out and started shoveling snow so that I could drive the car into our courtyard. And somehow I completely got us stuck in a huge snowdrift, and our neighbor was out shoveling, and he came over, and he very quickly said, "This is your first time in snow?" And I said, "Yes, definitely my first time." He could tell I was a major newbie, and so I think I've learned a little bit, gotten a little bit better about driving.
Letting me drive.
Right, exactly. But we've been really, I have been enjoying it. It's beautiful. It's really a great thing to wake up and just see the snow falling on the mountains in our backyard. We've really enjoyed that. So, but I am looking forward to spring.
Yeah, especially for the sickness. We've had still not as bad, but still sickness. So we're ready to get into spring and get rid of that.
Yes, hoping so. Hoping allergies don't bring something new. Yeah, ever since we went into the hospital, and thank you to everybody who was praying for us throughout that whole time. That was just a very new experience and kind of scary. I guess some of the things that people have been asking me is like what it's like in the hospital. And the private hospital was pretty good. Like I said, it was not too terrible. And then we got over to the public hospital, and most of the places had like up to 6 sick children in one room, and they were all with different respiratory illnesses. So a bunch of sick kids together in a room. Hi, Savvy, and hi, Margie. It's good to see you, sort of. And so anyway, they were in this big room, and it was very difficult because I didn't speak the language and trying to figure it out. And the very first night that we got there, they had a sign posted for what time dinner was. It was at 6 o'clock. And by 7 o'clock, I didn't receive any dinner. And I was like, what am I supposed to do? And I finally went out and asked the nurses. I was like, what's the process for dinner? And they were like, oh, well, you were supposed to go downstairs to the cafeteria. And I was like, I'm supposed to leave my, at that time, 3-week-old baby alone in a room and walk downstairs to get dinner for myself?
And at that time, you were having to chase nurses down to suction rooms so you could breathe.
Right, like constantly. And so I didn't realize that you're supposed to have, like, you bring your own meals for the most part. You have to bring your own toilet paper, your own towels. I mean, everything that you need, you have to bring in. They did finally, because of the age of Denton, started bringing my food to me. But then they would even ask me when I'm there, like, do you need a fork and a spoon? So I guess most people bring their own forks and spoons to the hospital. So you're supposed to bring everything with you.
Yeah, plasticware isn't super common, so we're not talking about like going and buying forks and spoons.
Right, and I didn't have a room. I mean, sorry, I didn't have a bathroom connected to my specific room, and so anytime I needed to go to the bathroom or needed to take a shower or anything, I had to walk like down the hall, way away from my own room, and so I'd have to leave Denton completely by himself.
Which doesn't sound like a terrible thing. Like, I was like, well, it's not that big a deal. Just leave me for a couple minutes. But then she told me that one day she had a guy come in and try to sell her watches out of his coat. And,
totally shady.
Not a pregnant mom or anything. He was a vendor who had snuck into the hospital. So yeah. After that, I don't think you left. No. Pretty much for anything.
Not at all. And then another day I had a Orthodox priest just walk into my room, like didn't knock or anything, just opened the door, walked into the room, and put like a brochure on my window, and then turned around and walked out. He was like in his Orthodox priestly robes, and it was very odd. It was very different. But we did get good care as far as the medical care goes, and so it was just a very interesting time. And the food was so awful. The food was so disgusting. I sent pictures to my mom and my sister all the time and was trying to tell them, like, I'm really trying to be grateful for the fact that I have food now, but I'm pretty sure I got fed a heart one day of some animal. I'm pretty sure it was a heart.
We did that for Valentine's Day one year. We ate hearts.
Yeah, it was disgusting. Then one time I got a whole fish, and it like still had a face on it. It had the eyes and the mouth and the teeth that were like open and stuff, and it was nasty. And it made me realize that I would not do very well in like an Asian country or something, because I feel like I'm a pretty adventurous eater, but some of that stuff I couldn't do. So anyway, that was kind of our adventure in the hospitals. I was very grateful that we did not have to take any bribes. I know that that's a big thing here. There's a lot of corruption in the hospital system where the nurses and the doctors won't really help you unless you either pay them money or you at least like bring them chocolate or something. And I didn't have anything, I didn't even really know you're supposed to do that. And thankfully, for the most part, we had pretty good care. Some of the nurses weren't too thrilled with me, but I think just because I was very obviously a foreigner, and I think they got kind of frustrated with not being able to communicate well with me, which I understand. But it made me so much more empathetic, not only to the people here who have to go to the public hospitals all the time, but then also for people in the United States who are immigrants or refugees who come over and can't speak the language, and it's so difficult. And so I was very much more empathetic to them. But anyway, all of that to say, Denton is doing well. Since coming home from the hospital, we've all been sick at different times because that's kind of how our life goes. But for the most part, we've been okay. So thank you so much for your prayers for us while we were going through that little trial. And yeah, so we really appreciate that. Denton's doing well. So two of the things we wanted to talk to you specifically about today was Yonuts, our tutor, and then the story about Ramona and her daughter Selena. So you want to go and talk about Yonuts a little bit?
Yeah, so as most of you know, I'm sure, Yonuts is our language tutor. So he's been one of the first Romanians that we've really had a lot of contact with, and since we got here all the way till now, and probably know him better than any other or most of the Romanians because we're with him every day. And it's been really cool to have language class with him, because he really does a good job of he's a good teacher. He looks for our interests, and so from the very beginning we've directed those interests towards the Bible and towards God, and so he's done a lot of homework, I guess, and I think he's pretty knowledgeable about the Bible because he grew up in the Orthodox Church, but he's done a lot of research and things too, like on the sacraments and why do we Protestants only have 2 sacraments, but the Orthodox have 7? Why isn't marriage a sacrament? There's some of the other things he's asked.
Yeah, I mean, in our last newsletter, if you had a chance to see our last newsletter, some of the different questions, even asking us about like discipline and parental discipline versus biblical discipline, and where's the balance between love and authority with that and the Bible, and then like Old Testament forms of godly punishment and discipline, and how it's any different from like torture.
If like the Old Testament led to a lot of the atrocities that you see, like with the Canaanites and things, or kind of how do you jive that with the ethic of love? And so that was interesting.
But it's been really cool to get to know him, and not only has it helped our language immensely, but also we kind of sense that he is sort of open to questioning and talking about it, at least from an intellectual perspective, but his wife seems fairly shut off to it. When we had him over one time for games and dinner, and we started to kind of steer the conversation in a religious direction, I guess you'd say, and his wife Adina closed off pretty quickly, and like kind of left the room and went and helped her children. And so that's something that y'all can be praying for us, is to have wisdom to know how to work with them in relationship of having a friendship with them, and how to steer conversations in the right direction, and how to be bold in sharing our beliefs, and also being respectful. And so that's some of the things going on with him. And it's kind of hard because on some of our newsletters and stuff, we want to be able to just, bluntly tell people, hey, pray for Yonuts. He's Orthodox and he's a great guy, but, he doesn't know Christ. But we're Facebook friends with him, and our newsletters are public, and so we can't write those things. And so sometimes it's hard to, you kind of got to read between the lines, I guess, sometimes in the newsletters to see that, oh, okay, we're meeting with Yonuts and we're telling you about him. So be praying for him because he's someone we're in a relationship with. Because we really have to balance the fact that we live here, and we want people praying for them, and we want y'all to know what we're doing in relationship with people, but also we can't write in a newsletter.
Yeah, we want to give people their privacy in the sense of not blast something out.
Right. Yeah, exactly. So anyway, be praying for Yonuts. Most recently, on last Friday, I went to class, and this next time I'm a part of the church's women's Bible study, and we meet every other Monday, and we take turns on who leads the chapter discussion. And we're reading John Piper's Don't Waste Your Life book right now. And so we're on chapter 6, and I actually volunteered to lead it this next time. So I'll be leading tomorrow, which you can pray for. But so I took that as an opportunity to tell Yonuts, hey, I'm going to be leading Bible study, and I'd really like to try to lead it as much as possible in Romanian, even though most people in the Bible study understand English. And so that was an opportunity to tell him about the book, and to tell him, to show him the questions that I'm asking, which of course led us into more discussion. And I thought it was pretty cool because at the end of it, he asked me, is that book available online as a PDF? And I said I didn't know. And he said he'd be really curious to take a look at the book and to know what it is that I'm studying and talking about. And the whole idea to him of women having a Bible study blows his mind. Again, just kind of with the Orthodox Church in general here. The idea of studying the Bible or studying biblical concepts and questioning and discussing it and coming to it and recognizing that it is difficult and there are some really serious questions, and grappling with those things together is really just, they don't do that. They don't have Bible studies in the Orthodox Church.
Probably also because you're women.
Oh yeah.
I think over here, the women are more in the submissive. Culturally.
Right.
Submissive.
Right. And in fact, one of my questions that I had written in preparation for tomorrow was asking about God's omniscience. And I used the word omniscient. And he looked at me and he was like, is your group going to know what that word means? He said, I think it's, as a teacher, it's really important to use words that everybody knows. And I'm like, yeah, everybody knows the word omniscience. Like we talked about it at our last group meeting. And so, just the idea of women getting together outside of Sunday morning church service to study the Bible and or biblical concepts, to question things, and then to know things on a deep level, like knowing what omniscience is and being able to grapple with that. They just don't have that in the Orthodox Church here. And so that was all new to him. So, I thought it was pretty cool that he was interested to see what book we're reading, and maybe some doors will continue to be open there in that light. So yeah, y'all just pray for Newts and his wife Adina, and then his children.
And I do want to backtrack just a little bit because Catalina was saying that he's a good guy, he knows a lot, but we don't think he knows Christ. He's Orthodox, and just to be clear, we said this a lot, but just in case you didn't hear it, Orthodox individuals can be Christians. The Orthodox Church can preach the gospel. But what we found with most of the people that we've talked to is that most of the individuals are Orthodox, but they're just very nominal. Like Yonuts he doesn't go to church. I think they go Easter, maybe,
and Christmas.
And of course they have their kids baptized in the church. That's it. So it's just it's not a living faith. It's an inherited system of beliefs or just customs for most people. And so we never want to be presumptuous and think that while they're here in Romania or they're Orthodox, they don't know Christ. That's not true necessarily, but by and large, that's kind of our experience and most of the experience of others, of other Christians who are here.
Right, exactly. So yeah, be praying for Yonuts. That's a big part of the relationship that we're building. I know you saw, we put up a picture of Yonuts and his son skiing, and Derek went to go skiing with them. And so, a lot of that is just building a relationship with their family. And also every time that Derek gets to go out with Yonuts, that's more language practice as well. And so just be praying for that relationship for us, that the Lord would use it for his glory.
Yeah, I'm really enjoying my time. I've gotten to go snowshoeing and orienteering and skiing, and get to play board games. And it's kind of nerdy like us. So it's a really good relationship, and he's intellectual. And, we really love it.
Yeah, really cool. So the next person that we wanted to talk with you about, we've used the name Alexa whenever we've written about this particular person. She is a part of the Roma population. Roma is basically a gypsy, but gypsy is a very pejorative term. And so that's what we're talking about when we say Roma. Savvy, Savannah just asked, how old is Yonuts?
40.
40-ish. Yeah, he's got a 6-year-old daughter and like a 9-year-old son. So 40-ish. Anyway, so so Alexa, as we put on our 40-day prayer request, if you receive our emails about our more specific prayer requests, and we put here on the Facebook group that her real name is Ramona, and she has a daughter, Selena. So just to give you a quick backtrack in case you haven't heard the story, she is a Roma lady who came to our door a couple times and knocked and, you know, was begging. And so we gave her food a couple times. Well, you know, of course, as soon as she gets food, she continues to come back to us. And so one day we finally just invited her in. We invited her in for tea and just sat down with her at her table and talked with her. Hey, Liam. We very much felt convicted that we had been kind of giving her stuff, kind of getting frustrated with her begging.
Yeah, I remember and we read about this too, but when the doorbell rang for like the fifth time she had come to our house, I looked on the screen and I was like, oh, it's her again. And
right.
Catalina said, do you know her name? And then we both were just like, we're jerks.
Yeah, we really weren't. You know, we have a heart and we want to be used for mercy ministry.
But we don't want to be used.
Right. And it's constantly a battle of the flesh for us with Ramona and Selena, because every time she comes, we know we're being manipulated. We know that we're being lied to. We know we're being used, and it's very frustrating to know that those things are truths, but you can't really prove it. And even so, we're called to love anyway. And so it's just been a really hard balance for us, and to have wisdom based on our past experiences with Derek on the diaconate, and just what we know about the Roma population here, and what we know about, you know, good practice with mercy ministry. It's been very difficult to know how to balance that with just showing her love. And so that's the number one thing that you can. The number two thing you can pray. Number one thing is, of course, that she would come to know Christ, because helping her, you know, in any other way is not enough unless she comes to know Christ. Number two way is to pray for our hearts, that we would have the Christ, you know, the ability to love her like Christ, even when it's very frustrating to us the way that we know we're being used, and that we would just have wisdom to know how to work with her. You want to tell a little bit about her story and what's gone on with her?
Yeah, so when she came in for coffee the first time, we just kind of sat and talked with her for a little bit, and she asked for money, and that's one thing that we don't give money. We don't just give money. And so, you know, she was telling us that her daughter was sick, or I think it was just sick at that point. And so eventually Ramona she said, well, can I do work for you? Which kind of surprised us, because most needy people don't, they don't ever get to that point. They're not going to do something for it. If you can't give them something with ease, then they'll kind of move on and try to find somebody else. But Ramona, she asked if we had work, and so we thought that was great, and so we provided work for her, which is really easy to do with 3 kids, because we make a really big mess. Mm-hmm. And so Ramona helps us to clean on Thursdays. And so we told her, all right, come on Thursday, and so she did. And she was really prompt. In fact, she was really early. And almost every time she shows up early. And why does she show up early all the time? And Catalina's like, well, she doesn't have a cell phone, so we can't call her, we can't cancel. And actually, I think the second time she came, we were in Bucharest with Denton in the hospital, so we couldn't tell her that we weren't going to be around. So she doesn't have a watch. She doesn't have a phone. She can't really tell time. And there are all these little things that you just don't even think about with communication and time telling, and just with kind of people who are in that position. So anyway, the second time she came, now all of a sudden I think her daughter Selena was in the hospital. And the third time she came, her daughter needed a heart transplant. Then the next time she came, now her daughter needed us to buy her, or needed to get some machine to be bought for her. It was like
for oxygen treatments.
Yeah.
And then she needed to go to a whole other city for the heart transplant, and kind of on and on and on.
Yeah, which had she come to us before Dent was in the hospital, we would have been like, I don't know about this. But after being in the hospital and realizing that a lot of times you do have to buy your own equipment or epidurals if you're pregnant, or you have to bring them in from the outside, a lot of it sounded like it could be legitimate. Mm-hmm. But the story just kept growing, and from our experience with other individuals back in the States, that's kind of how the system works. Mm-hmm. And so then last time that Ramona came, just last week, we got to meet Selena.
Yeah, and so how that happened was, excuse me, Ramona came on a Friday and told us that there was a big emergency because Selena needed oxygen treatments. And so could we give her $50 to go buy this oxygen treatment that she needed? And so we were trying to figure out, okay, how do we do this? And instead of just giving her money, we explained to her, we need more information before we just give money. And so I called one of our other missionary friends here and asked if she could go with me to the hospital and take Ramona and Selena. So we were thinking, we're providing you transportation, and I'll go with you and pay for the treatment in person so that I can kind of find out more information. And so, according to her, it was an emergency. Selena needed it now. She needed oxygen. And so we kind of dropped what we were doing and said, okay, well, we'll go with you. Well, so then it turned into, I don't know what the schedule is for the doctors. And so I can't go right now. And so I asked Ramona, I said, well, okay, if I had just given you $200 or 200 lei, which is $50, if I had just given you $50, what was your plan? How are you going to go about doing anything with that $50? And she couldn't give me an answer. And it's really difficult because on the one hand, in my head, I'm thinking, you don't have a plan because you're totally just conning me, and you don't need $50 for treatments. You're just lying to get the money from me. But then Derek and I have worked with people in poverty before in the States, and we've worked with students who have grown up in poverty. And sometimes legitimately people in poverty don't always know how to make a plan. They just live from one emergency to the next, and that's part of the cycle of poverty, is that they don't know how to save, they don't know how to think of the future. Those are skills that we don't recognize that we've been taught growing up if you're not being raised in poverty. And so there's constantly that question too in the back of our minds, is maybe she's not conning us. I mean, maybe she doesn't know how to make a plan, and all she knew was, okay, my daughter needs something, I need money, so I'm going to go.
That's just the first thing. I need to get money.
Right.
Now I'm going to go to the hospital and figure it out.
Right. But so it was obviously very suspicious to us that she couldn't tell us anything. Like, she said no to us taking her that day. She couldn't tell us what her plan was. And then finally she said, okay, I'll come tomorrow morning, which was Saturday.
And it's an emergency on Friday, so.
Right, exactly. So she said, well, what about tomorrow at 8 a.m.? So I said, okay. I again set up with my friends who can speak better Romanian than me. I said, I'll set up with her, come meet us at 8, and we'll get ready to go. So my friend and I both got up and got ready, and of course at 8 she doesn't show up. And then she shows up at 10 and says that the doctor ended up coming to her house and providing some sort of treatment.
From several hours away.
Right, a doctor, yeah, from a whole different city came to her house, and then she needs to go on Monday. But now it's whatever. She needs to go on Monday to the doctor, and she's going to go with Selena. And so I said, okay, on Monday, I'll go with you. And I even said, how about you and Selena, your daughter, why don't you come to our house? I'll cook lunch for everybody, and then we can go together to the hospital. And I even asked, what can your daughter eat? And she specifically said, like chicken soup is what she needs. So I woke up early on Saturday. That didn't work out. Monday, I woke up early and got chicken soup prepared before getting our kids off and going to school myself and coming home. And then she not only showed up late, but when she came with her daughter Selena, it was like she had no clue that we had talked about lunch. And she just said, no, we don't want lunch. And I'm sitting here thinking, oh my gosh, are you kidding me? Like, we specifically made this plan for you. And then she told me that she's not going to the hospital that day. And she is actually going to go to another city that night for a different hospital. And so today she just asked if she could work, if she could clean our house to work, to get some money in order to go on there to the other city that they needed to go to for the other hospital. And so, it's really difficult. It's frustrating when we're trying to change plans for our own family around to help, and then her plan's getting changed. And again, always in the back of our minds, we're like 99% sure that we're being manipulated anyway and being flat lied to, but we don't know for sure. And so we're always trying to err on the side of grace, but not knowing how to do that very well. So anyway,
and trying to do it well in that language.
Yeah, that too. But so we got to meet Selena. We ended up letting Ramona clean that day, and it actually gave us more time to talk with Selena. Our kids loved Selena. Just from the moment she walked in, it was really cool to see them just want to jump in her lap, and it was really cute to see that. I got to talk with her. I, asked her at one point, because she doesn't go to school. Her parents, well, they say that she's too sick to go to school. There were no signs of her being sick that we could tell at all. They said that Ramona had told us previously that she had gotten her heart transplant 2 weeks ago. There was no sign of her having a heart transplant.
She walked up the big hill.
Seemed to have no problems with that. Melissa, Selena is 12, and doesn't go to school. She didn't have any sort of scar. When I asked her about her surgery, you could tell she kept glancing over at her mom, trying to figure out what she's supposed to say. She couldn't tell me what type of surgery it was. She told me that there is no scar. I asked her, does she have a scar? And she said no. She couldn't even tell me what it was that got operated on. She didn't know any of that. So it was a very clear confirmation that she is lying to us. Which, on the one hand, is good, because we have been praying for God to give us wisdom and to know the truth of what's going on. But then again, it also got us a chance to meet Selena, to talk with her. As her mom was cleaning, I sat down with her while I was nursing Denton, and I asked her if she wanted to hear a story. And I did my best in Romanian to share with her the story of the prodigal son. Just to say, I said, hey, do you want to know a story from my culture that I know? And she said yes. So I shared with her the story of the prodigal son. Again, she got to hold our kids, hold Denton. And so we feel like we're making connections there. And so we are glad that we got to meet Selena, not only to recognize more of the truth, but also just to get to know them on a deeper level. And we're supposed to see Ramona again for her cleaning our house again on this Thursday. So that's a huge prayer request, is that, we don't really know how to go about it. but we do feel like there's no way for her to recognize that we are choosing to love her, even though we know she's lying to us, unless we tell her that we know she's lying to us. And that's a hard conversation to have. How do you have that conversation with somebody, but then say, but we still want you to come. We still want to get to know your family. We still want to get to know you. You know, we've asked her to church. We still want you to come to church with us. And so if y'all can just pray for us to have wisdom on how to do that.
Yeah, and we've done that on smaller things. Like one time, I think when Selena was supposedly in the hospital, we had just, when Ramona works, we pay her, but then a lot of times we'll also give her a goodie bag of like.
Oh, every time we give her food as well.
Yeah. And so we had just given her, she asked for like paper towels or laundry detergent or something. Then the very next week she asked for.
Yeah, so she came and asked for toilet paper for her daughter in the hospital. Again, having just been in the hospital myself, I knew that was probably legitimate if she's in the hospital. So I gave her an entire, like, big, huge family-size pack of toilet paper, which for the 4 of us here in this house takes us, probably 2 weeks to go through. She came 5 days later and asked for more toilet paper and said that Selena at that point was in a coma in the hospital, and then proceeded to ask for more toilet paper in the hospital. And so I told her in Romanian, I said, if your daughter's in a coma, she's not using the toilet, and so she doesn't need toilet paper. And so we've been trying to balance that, not in a way of, oh, I'm trying to catch you all the time and I'm trying to get you.
I'm not going to let you manipulate me, because that's not the goal of
right.
of loving and showing grace is not to allow yourself to be manipulated. It's to love even through the manipulation. And so,
right.
We push back where it's very clear that there are issues. So you can just pray that we'd have courage to do that, because we haven't had the big conversation about, the heart transplant is not legitimate, and we know you lied to us. It's a little bit bigger than toilet paper.
Right. And then just through it all, that we would have soft hearts toward her, that we would have love for her, because again, it's just hard to be around somebody who consistently manipulates you and lies to you. Just that we would have love for her and not become hardened to her, even though these things are happening. So those are kind of the 2 big relationships that we wanted to tell you about. We thought that was important because so much of what we do here, besides focusing on language, is building relationships. And that's, we feel fairly convinced that is the best form of evangelism that God has called us to right now. That, we're not necessarily going and preaching on a street corner, but that we are consistently trying to meet people and build relationships, and then in those relationships, steering conversations toward Christ. And so it's very much relationship based, but it's really hard to kind of write in a newsletter that these are our friends who now we're, specifically trying to evangelize, because they can see that, and we don't want them to feel like it's just, for a goal of getting them to church, but it's because we're developing relationships and we truly enjoy those relationships. But yes, obviously we have a goal of bringing them to Christ. So anyway, it's a hard balance to have. And so that's why we wanted to really kind of update y'all on what's going on there in those relationships.
And just to kind of jump on that too. It's one of those things that it kind of highlights the philosophy that we have, with relationships. We've both been a part of, strategies before where you're very program oriented, and you just you sow your seeds broadly, and then you kind of move on, which I'm sure can have its place, but our desire is to grow the church and to go deep. And one of our biggest frustrations when we were in the States was that when we were teaching full time and involved in the church, and new parents, it was really difficult to make time for people. And as I was on the diaconate, sometimes, with this one individual, I got called out at like 11 p.m. and Catalina's at home with Elin, the new baby, and I leave at 11 a.m. to go to some shady place and help out this individual. And so then I had to go to work the next day, and it was just really difficult for us to be what people needed us to be, to have the grace to show people, to build those relationships. And so one of the things that we really want to do here is we want to make ourselves available for people as we build relationships. And that makes quantifying things and kind of, explaining things a little bit difficult.
Right. Because we are committed to relationship-based ministry as much as possible. So we're not always going to be able to write that we, had a VBS this week or something like that. But, so much of it is, like I said, making ourselves available so that when Ramona does come and say that she needs someone to go to the hospital today or tomorrow, that we are able, we're able to do that. So it's really hard to tell people like what our day-to-day life looks like. A lot of language study. We're trying to figure out the schedule and transitioning to where Derek is going to be out more often, trying to be in the community, meet more people, be able to practice language more. I have a friend from the church who comes over and helps me twice a week with just talking and fellowship and language. And so, that's kind of what we're transitioning to. Derek's going to be meeting with more people in the next couple months to figure out what a university ministry might look like, and getting to know some of those things. And so that's kind of what we have on the horizon. We've also got Denton's baptism coming up that y'all can pray for, which is going to be hopefully a big opportunity for evangelism to get people in our church, because baptisms here are very important for the Orthodox people, because that's kind of, they view that as soon as they're baptized into the church, they're good, they're saved. And so everyone comes, and it's a big ordeal. Whereas in the States, our kids are baptized in a normal Sunday church service, in a couple minutes and they're done. Here, they have a totally separate service on a Saturday morning, and everyone stays after and has lunch together. So it's a big ordeal. And so that's coming up in April for us. And that's going to be an opportunity for us to invite a lot of these people that we're getting to know to come to Denton's baptism and come and stay after for lunch, so that they are coming into the church. And then they'll also, because of the type of service it will be, we'll get to hear a message of grace and covenant families and what baptism means. But it doesn't mean salvation, but it means that they're part of God's covenant family. And so that's coming up in April that y'all can be praying about. But anyway, that's kind of what our day-to-day life is really difficult to tell you. This is what we do every day. But some of those are some of the things that we're transitioning to. The baptism date is April 14th. My mom just asked that question. Mom, you'll be here for that. So Make sure you know that. Savvy, you asked at this point, what do you tell people that our job is? And do they ask? Yes, they ask all the time why we're here, because it's weird that we're here. And we just say that we're here working with a church in Kodlia that needed some extra help. So that's, I mean, pretty much what we say. We're very honest that we're here working with the church.
Yeah, and we try to, we say it's a Romanian church because I think it's always uncomfortable telling people that because being foreigners, saying that you work in a church isn't a big deal. But when you're a foreigner who says you work in a church, I think the Romanian culture is used to being used by foreigners. They kind of feel like, right after the wall came down and when people started coming over, it was all of a sudden their culture was invaded and everybody's trying to convert them to their denomination. And so there's this kind of skepticism when they see foreigners come in and say that they're working for a church. So I always try to make sure that I say we're working with a Romanian church, just to try to emphasize that we're coming over here and we're kind of assimilating into your culture. We're not just trying to come and make you assimilate into ours.
And Melissa, you asked to hear some Romanian, so we'll do our best.
I'm not good at it. Go ahead.
At living. Okay, so mâine o să mergem la cumpărător pentru mâncare și pentru o mașină pentru spălăm haine. Și cursul cu Ionuț a fost
So tomorrow I'll go to the store to buy, what did you say?
To buy food. Okay.
And then I'll go in the car to wash your clothes. You said
yeah, or no, I was going to say the washing machine because I couldn't think of what a dryer is. But then she copy mei o să merg la graniță și o să meargă. Și astăzi am avut slujba în biserică și este mai bine pentru că este în românește și acum pot să înțeleg mai mult decât când început.
So today there's a church service and it's good because it's in Romanian. And her Romanian is better now than when you started.
Okay, so you said something now? No, I'll translate for you.
Tell me what to say in English.
Well, I can't. Oh, that's it. I don't know. Tell him that. I don't know. I'm bad at that thing too.
Ramona vine aici fiecare joi să spală casa noastră.
So Ramona comes here every Thursday in order to, you said, wash our house.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Face curat.
Yeah, in order to clean our house.
Yeah.
What does the word she mean?
And?
Yeah, it means and. Or also.
Yeah. Yeah, which gets really confusing because sometimes you'll see she and you expect and, but it's also because they don't say it.
Yeah. The hardest thing, no, not the hardest. One thing that I'm really struggling with is that in order to speak Romanian, I feel like I have to think differently. So I can't just think in my head, okay, that's enough, and then translate the words, that is enough. Instead, I have to think, okay, Romanians would say, that is sufficient. And so then I can change it to that it's sufficient. Or, for example, in English, we say, I am 29 years old. Instead, here they say, I have 29 years. And so a lot of it is, it's not just I can think in English and translate. We have to learn the phrases think in Romanian, and it's difficult sometimes to think, you know, what different word can I use here, or what different word would be more normal for a Romanian to say, and how can I translate that rather than just thinking in English.
Yeah, because the vocabulary is actually, like, I think pretty easy, because there are a lot of very similar words like sufficient, suficient, or in Spanish, fácil is easy. And here the CI makes the ch sound, so it's just fácil, which is easy.
Right. So it's very similar. It's just, again, the grammar is hard, and then figuring out how to think like a Romanian.
Yeah, because I didn't realize I don't even know English grammar, because they're using, like, I don't know, terms sub something, definite. I mean, I kind of know what definite is, but yeah, I don't know grammar. And so, like, for this, that, these, and those, right, we've got 4 terms. They've got 16, right, because you can have this car, like this, the car, this specific car. You can have this kind of generic car, like, just, I don't know what the difference is.
Right, and then you can have male and female words, and then
right, the male
singular
and
plural. Right, so it's a lot. Melissa, I am certainly not dreaming in Romanian yet. I feel like I'm starting to think a little bit more, mainly because I make myself, like, if I'm driving the car, I try to think in Romanian as much as possible.
But there are some things that, like, if somebody says something and you agree, you're just like, da, da.
Right.
Like, there are things that you say so frequently that it's more natural to say it that way.
Right. But no dreams yet, unfortunately.
I found it harder to think in English, which hopefully means that the Romanian is going to be coming, and I don't lose English and not get Romanian.
Right. Then you're just stuck in some no man's land. Yeah, I don't know how much right now of my inability to talk is because of learning a new language versus just mommy brain. But a lot of times when I'm in class, I'll tell young dudes, I can't even think of what I'm trying to say in English. Like, I don't even know, I can't form thoughts right now. So we're kind of in that hump that we're trying to get over with the language, but we're enjoying it. And
yeah, I think a lot of the hard part right now, we've got a really good base. A lot of it's just the use in natural context. So, you know, young Newt's in class, he does a really good job. It's a conversation for the most part. But, you know, you stop and you analyze, and there's structure. It's difficult to find people to have natural conversations with for extended periods of time.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's tiring. Our brain gets tired after a while, where at the beginning of a conversation, I'll be tracking, I'll be good, and then somewhere in the middle, I'll realize that my brain just feels foggy. It's like it's hard to keep up. And so, yeah, but we are, I feel like, you know, worlds further than we were at the beginning, and definitely feel like we are at a point where we can get around and do pretty much whatever we need to, go to the grocery store, order food, you know, take a taxi if we need to, like all of the just day-to-day living, you know, mostly talking to our neighbors. And when we find someone who's willing to be patient with us, we feel like we can hold a conversation, but it's just that we're very slow. And so that's been the hardest part. And especially because so many people here know English, that the moment we try to speak in Romanian and they realize that we're foreigners, and because of the way we look, they assume we speak English, they'll just immediately say, oh, do you want to speak English? And sometimes, like today there was a lady I met at church, and I kept trying to respond to her in Romanian to practice my Romanian, but she just continued to speak to me in English. So, you know,
and they not only want to practice it, but we understand that it's probably painful for them, because even when we were just talking now, like, you can tell that we have to think about it. It's just choppy and slow.
Yeah, so it's not super fun for them, I'm sure. But that's kind of where we feel like we are in language school, or language in general. Hi, Nelsons. We love and miss y'all too. So I guess to kind of wrap things up, because we do want to try to keep this under an hour. Didn't know it was going to go that long, actually. I feel like things with the family are going well. We have continued to have roller coaster sickness. We don't even post about it anymore because it seems like
if we're in the hospital, we'll post, but
otherwise we're mostly sick in some form or fashion. Someone in the house is always sick.
Especially if we're going to go on a date, to be sick.
Yes, exactly. We try to plan anything, we get sick. But so that has made things difficult. But I also have started to feel a little bit of homesickness. And not, I don't think it's culture shock yet because I'm not like hating anything about living here. I actually really enjoy living here. Well, okay, other than that. Oops, sorry. But I don't feel like I have culture shock, but I am just feeling a little bit of homesickness. Missing a lot of my friends. Yeah, I know that's normal to go through, but would love for y'all to be praying for us with that, and for me specifically. As far as Elin goes, we have seen a huge change and progress for her. She has several little friends at her pre-K now that she really enjoys, and she is learning some Romanian. Not a ton yet, but some. And she's doing really well overall. So yeah, all of those things other than the sickness and kind of the beginnings, I guess, of homesickness, we really are doing well and just feel so supported by our friends and family at home and our churches and just all the people we know who are praying for us and loving on us from so far away. So we really appreciate that. So yeah, I think there weren't too many questions. I think I got all of the questions and that we answered them. Sorry, Savvy, no, Denton is not eating steak quite yet, but he is really huge. He's 2.5 months old. He is almost outgrowing his 3-month clothes and moving up to 6-month clothes. So he's big. So yeah, I think that's about it. We really appreciate anybody who was able to hop on here and stayed with us for an hour and gave us an opportunity to update you on some of those important relationships you can be praying about.
And we love sharing. We try to give you a overview with the newsletter. We try to do these for kind of more personal touch, and we write a lot on our blog to try to kind of go in depth with some of the things that we're experiencing. But we would love if you're ever interested and you have a question not during your Facebook Live time to email us or Facebook us, and we'd love to fill you in.
Yeah. So one quick question, Margie, getting much sleep? Meh. Denton's actually a really good sleeper, but the other two sometimes wake up. But we're doing okay overall. We love all y'all too. Thank you so much for joining us, whether it was live or you caught it later. And let us know if you have any questions, and we will hopefully communicate with all of you in one way or another really soon. So have a good night.